This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
There is a lot going on this weekend in the sporting world. We already discussed the Final Four for both the men's and women's tournaments yesterday here on the show with Dr. Ed Feng, but there's a lot of other stuff beyond that going on too. EPL Matchweek 32 with a pretty tight race atop the table. We'll talk about that with Austan Cass today. I'm going to talk Stefon Diggs, his trade to the Houston Texans, talk about the betting fallout of that based on my numbers, and we'll talk some NASCAR in Martinsville. We talked baseball in the solo shot today, so hey, there's a lot going on beyond just the Final Four, and it is a delight to break it all down for today. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here to kick things off by Austan Cass. Check him out on Twitter at Austan Cass. Find his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior editor. Austan, pleasure to have you back on the show for today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
Good. It's been a minute because EPL had the little break, and then last week we had a lot of stuff going on with men's college basketball, so I have not gotten my dose of EPL in a while. I know I didn't miss a lot just because they had that stretch, but how have things gone for you in the interim?
It's been really good. Yeah, it's been a fun time of the sports calendar right now, so it's been fun.
Yeah. No more college basketball after this weekend, which is kind of a bummer. But do you care about Indiana State at all? I know that you're like in Indiana, but do you have any inclination, positive or negative, towards them, or no?
Not really. I wanted to see them make the tournament just because they had a special year by their standard, but
yeah,
I didn't care too much about the NIT.
Okay. It looked like a pretty fun game last night, but we'll talk about the EPL with Austan here in a second and get his read on that. And again, we'll talk some NFL with the Stefon Diggs trade and NASCAR later on as well. But first, a reminder, if you want to find our show on the men's and women's Final Four, we talked to Dr. Ed Feng here on the show yesterday. He broke down his thoughts on all four games. Couple of bets Ed does like for this weekend, both on the men's and women's side. So find that on the FanDuel FanDuel YouTube page, on FanDuel TV Plus, and on the Covering the Spread podcast feed as well. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and make sure you are subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Austan, because we have not discussed EPL in a while, we haven't gotten to talk about the top of the table, and the race here is heating up for the outright market in the English Premier League. Right now, Liverpool now minus 105 following the win over, I think it was Sheffield United yesterday. Man City plus 190, Arsenal plus 280. So three teams fully in the race, I think within 3 or so points right now. So it's a fun little contest going on here. Any read for you on where this market stands right now?
Yeah, so this is going to be a really fun final stretch here. Like you said, true 3-team race, and each team has like a really cool storyline going with it. City are trying to win their 4th in a row, which has never been done. Liverpool have Jurgen Klopp, their manager, who's leaving after this year. And then Arsenal kind of got to this position last year and faltered, and they have a young team, and it feels like they've been building toward this. So, yeah, each team has a fun little storyline with it. But to be honest, I think the market's pretty spot on. Earlier this year, I talked with you about how I thought City was too big of a favorite, and I liked Liverpool and Arsenal, and they've both done pretty well. If I had to pick one team, despite what I said this preseason, I think I would take Man City.
Okay.
They've been off it a little this year compared to previous seasons, but I still think they're the best team, and they also have a slightly easier schedule coming up. Their 2 toughest matches left are at Brighton and at Tottenham. At Tottenham's probably the toughest of the two. Those are really the only matches where it wouldn't shock me if they lost or drew. But I would say even in the at Spurs match, the toughest of the two, they're probably going to be around minus 140, minus 150 to win. So I think there's a very realistic chance they win all their matches the rest of the way. Another interesting variable here, if you want to decide with Liverpool, is that of these three, Liverpool's the only one that's not in the Champions League. They're in the Europa League. So while City and Arsenal have midweek matches, and they might actually end up playing each other in the Champions League, Liverpool also have midweek matches, but not quite the level of the Champions League. So that's something working in their favor. But in general, I think City, they know it's go time right now. They had a disappointing, from their perspective, performance in a 0-0 tie with Arsenal not that long ago here. And midweek, they just beat Aston Villa 4-1. It was 3.0 to 0.7 on expected goals. They just massacred them. And Villa's a pretty good team. They're in fourth right now. So Kevin De Bruyne, Erling Haaland didn't start in that match, and City still played that well. So I think they have the highest ceiling of these three teams. And like I said, I think there's a chance they win every match the rest of the way.
So Man City right now, plus 190 at FanDuel Sportsbook. You talked about the Champions League factor in this. Would Arsenal and Man City prioritize the EPL given how tight the race is over the Champions League, or is that going to trump everything regardless?
I would say neither of them would prioritize either competition over the other.
Okay.
Prior to Man City winning the Champions League last year, I would say maybe they would prioritize the Champions League because they'd never won it. I think they're both going to put out the best teams they can in every match. So the players, it's going to be a grueling stretch here for the players. Liverpool will probably play a really good lineup in all their Europa League games, but they could sit somebody like Mohamed Salah and probably still advance. So that's definitely a feather in their cap here.
Okay. And with Man City, it might actually be a benefit that their guys are banged up. The fatigue factor may not be as important with them, given they've had a lot of time off between De Bruyne and Haaland as well. So I hope maybe actually a weird benefit from the way things have broken for them so far. But Austin does like Man City plus 190 right now in the outright market. 10-match slate coming up here from Matchweek 32, Austin. Let's kick things off by talking about the traditional markets. Where are you seeing value right now there at FanDuel Sportsbook?
So in the Bournemouth-Luton Town match on Saturday at 10, I really like Luton Town in the double chance market to win or draw at minus 120. I actually don't even mind them that much to win at money line plus 260. This time of year, I factor in motivation a little more than I usually would, and the motivation element certainly lies with Luton Town. They need points to escape the bottom three. As it stands, they're in 18th. They're 3 points behind the team in 17th. They're going to be desperate for points here, and I'm sure they're going to view this home match against Bournemouth as a game they can win. Bournemouth, meanwhile, are in 11th. They really don't have much to play for at this point. They're not going to get relegated, and they're not fighting for a European spot next year. But it's not all about motivation. Luton Town have been pretty feisty at home this season. Despite winning or drawing only 6 of the 15 home matches, they've been a bit unlucky to not see some better results. Their home goal differential is only -4. Across their past 3 home games, they've drawn against Nottingham Forest and then had 1 goal defeats against both Aston Villa and Manchester United. They've given the big boys a fight at home all year. They had 1 goal defeats against Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal as well. Due to kind of a quirk in the schedule, Luton Town and Bournemouth actually just played a couple weeks ago, and it was a 4-3 Bournemouth win at Bournemouth. The expected goal total was 2.3 to 2.0 in favor of Bournemouth, so it was a really fun game. But to me, that tells me Luton Town can play with these guys. Bournemouth are better, but I don't think the gap's very big. So when I factor in home field advantage and a motivation factor, knowing Luton Town's going to be doing everything in their power to get at least a draw, I feel pretty good about taking them to win or draw at minus 120.
Yeah, that's in the double chance market, as Austin mentioned, minus 120 for Luton Town and draw, which means you get a win if they win the match outright or get the draw. The Luton Town money line, plus 260 to win this thing outright. You can also go to tie no bet if you want to go that route, plus 180. So a lot of different routes to getting exposure to Luton Town, but Austin's favorite one is the double chance market, minus 120 for them to win or to get a draw in this one. What about player props? Any value for you across there this week, Austin?
So I'm actually going to stick with that same game.
Love it.
And go with Carlton Morris to score or assist at plus 135. So don't need to run through how important this match is for Luton Town, but as I said, there were 7 goals and 4.3 total expected goals the last time these two teams played. This match is minus 213 to go over 2.5 goals. So I say all that to say there should be goals and for both sides. Morris has 8 goals and 4 assists this year in 25 league starts, and he's Luton Town's penalty taker. He's cashed all 4 of his penalties in league play. The penalty rule is obviously a really big feather in his cap in this market. And so is his playing time. He's played all 90 minutes in 9 straight matches across all competitions. So all in all, I think this plus 135 number is pretty appealing.
Now, we often talk a lot about waiting to make sure the guy's in the lineup before you actually lock in the bet. Are you okay with this Morris one with where things currently stand?
Yeah, I am, because I think he'll almost surely start unless something has happened at practice the past couple of days that nobody knows about.
Okay, and these two markets are SGP eligible. I'm not going to push that on you, Austin, because it's obviously a different dynamic here. But if you decided you want to pair those together, Carlton Morris to score or assist and Luton to either win or draw is plus 232. So you can consider that as well. Obviously, these two markets are pretty heavily correlated, so you can consider that too in what Austin thinks should be a pretty fun match. Plus 232 again for Carlton Morris to score or assist and Luton to win or draw. That's all we got here for today for Austin. Should be a pretty fun slate and also a pretty fun close out to the year, Austin. So I'm excited to get you back here on the show in the very near future, talk more EPL and keep tabs as that very fun race at the top evolves. Enjoy your weekend with a lot of fun basketball and soccer. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jim.
Alrighty, again, find Austin on Twitter at AustinCast. And you can also check him out on FanDuel Research to get his thoughts on various sports there as well. We're going to dive into the Stefon Diggs trade, talk about the fallout from a betting perspective, and let you know if I see any value in win totals, divisional odds, and then talk NASCAR and Martinsville in just 1 second. But first, if your bracket is busted, don't worry, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament, whether you're betting on the men's or women's side of things. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 using point spreads, money lines, whatever it may be. Just visit FanDuel.com and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only, $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, and Vermont. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777. Visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghealth.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghealth.org in Maryland, 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-HOPE-NY or text OPEN-Y in New York. Now, this trade is a bit old, but I haven't gotten a chance to talk about it yet, with Stefon Diggs going to the Houston Texans from the Buffalo Bills. I honestly did not think this trade would happen. I thought that Diggs was kind of just a dramatic guy. We tended to overblow his sideline antics, but it happened. So here we are with Stefon Diggs now being on the Houston Texans. And right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, the Bills win total is 10.5. Over for them is -106. And the Texans are at 9.5. Over for them is now -134. Previously for Houston, their over was +104 at 9.5. So pretty big movement there with them. And there's been a lot of talk about Stefon Diggs and whether or not he's still a good player because the age is up there. There wasn't a lot of production towards the back half of last year. But I still think that Diggs is a good, very impactful player. And when you look back to last year, part of it was the fact they became a somewhat run-heavy team. Part of it was you'd see defenses roll their coverage his way because Gabe Davis is banged up towards the end. There weren't a lot of other threats on that Bills team, especially downfield, because Dalton Kincaid is not a guy that used down the field. So I think it was a lot of schematic stuff that led to the lack of production for Stefon Diggs. So I still have high expectations for him, and I think that he does boost this Houston offense. So when I take a look at Houston, I think this is a good get for them, and it did boost them in my win total model an okay amount. Couple issues with them right now. The first one is that I think the Jags are a bit undervalued in the AFC South and in terms of their overall projection, which makes Houston's schedule a bit tougher. And Houston actually does get a downgrade based on their schedule by my numbers. If you take their like overall win expectation based on their power rankings, I'd be right in line with market over 9.5 wins at -134. But they get a downgrade as a result of their schedule of 0.6 wins. And that's one of the bigger ones across the entire league. Actually, it is the third biggest schedule adjustment in the entire league right now. New England has a tougher schedule, and then Minnesota. Then it's the Houston Texans. Actually, the Bills are fourth as far as toughest schedule as well. So I like the Texans, and I have a very high expectation for them from a power ranking perspective. But I still can't get to their win total of 9.5 wins because of how tough that schedule is. Other tough thing for me is I kind of wish they decided to go and address the defense instead, because like I've already got their offense as being very good by my numbers. So like if we're talking about marginal gains, I feel like they probably could have had a bigger jolt to their expectation by trying to address their pass defense. And they've done so by adding Danielle Hunter. If they can get Derek Stingley healthy for an entire year, then maybe we see this Texans team, the defense, outperform expectations. But that for me right now is the biggest thing holding them back is the fact that their pass defense is a little bit in the middle of the pack, maybe a bit worse than that. So I love CJ Stroud. I love the way this offense is constructed right now. I just can't get to betting them with where things stand. I mentioned before the downward adjustment for the Texans schedule. The Jacksonville Jaguars do not get a similar downgrade. Actually, they get a slight upgrade of 0.1 wins. So even though I've got the Texans as being the better team by a decent margin, I still have a slightly higher win total on the Jags than I do on the Texans. So when I look at the AFC South market right now, I actually do think there's value in the Jags at plus 280 to win the AFC South. We see movement towards the Texans as a result of the Stefon Diggs trade, and they have gone up in my win total projections. But again, when you combine the Texans schedule with the Jags schedule, that's a swing of 0.7 wins, and it does make a pretty tangible difference. So I don't mind this trade for the Texans at all. You get a good player who is still, I think, a productive player. Didn't give up a ton to get him, and the money aspect of it, they're totally fine there. So I don't mind the trade. I just still think there is value in the Jags to win the AFC South because of the movement we've seen towards the Texans. So I think if there is one takeaway from this Stefon Diggs trade for me, it's that the Jags may now be undervalued to win the AFC South as a result of the attention the Texans have gotten for this trade. Again, I like the trade. I like Stefon Diggs as a player, and I love this offense. But concern around the Texans defense make me think they might be a bit overvalued, especially once you factor in the schedule they'll face. So it's a bummer, but I might have to bet against CJ Stroud at some point this year. We'll do so via the futures market with the Jags to win the AFC South at plus 280. On the Bills side of things, I'm still right in line with their win total as well. Again, that's 10.5. Over is -106. And I think that's about fair. Now, looking at the AFC East market, the Bills are plus 160 there, Dolphins plus 170, and the Jets are plus 240. I do have this like as being somewhat tight at the top. The Bills at 10.7 wins, the Dolphins at 10.2. The Jets I'm below market on, as we discussed in the win total show earlier on this week, or maybe it's last week. Regardless, a bit lower on them. So I still think the Bills should be where they're at, but I think this market is decently efficient. I would probably like to buy in the Bills at some point. I think they will address wide receiver in the draft. And if they do so, I have faith in Josh Allen. I don't think that's like an outlandish thought process. Obviously, this defense has been gutted. They've lost some offensive linemen. They've lost Diggs. They've lost Gabe Davis, but it's still Josh Allen. So I want to keep tabs on this AFC East market because, again, I'm below market on the Jets. Don't like the Patriots. My numbers like the Dolphins. I don't like them as much personally. So that's kind of a tough one there too, but want to keep tabs here. And if the Bills lengthen a bit more, maybe I can buy in at some point there just because I have faith in Josh Allen. Not reacting to that right now, but do want to keep tabs and potentially check it out later on, just because I do still think that the Bills can win the AFC South, despite the fact they've had a lot of additions throughout this offseason, just betting on quarterback, and that's betting on Josh Allen when it comes to the AFC East. Want to finish up here by talking about some NASCAR in Martinsville for this weekend. And honestly, betting markets at FanDuel Sportsbook pretty efficient for this week. Not seeing a lot of value on most drivers. There is one exception, though, and it's a pretty big exception for me. And that's buying into Daniel Suarez. And I show value in Suarez in every single market. He's 100-1 to win. He is 15-1 to finish top 5, and he is plus 350 to finish inside the top 10. Now, you've probably heard the term laddering before. I'm sure that Tom Vecchio has used it here on the show. But what laddering is, for those of you who are not familiar, is you break up your bet into different markets where you place the majority of the market, or the majority of your bet, on the most generous market, which are here for Suarez would be the top 10 bet. For a strikeout bet, it'd be like the baseline bet. And then you put progressively smaller amounts on the higher upside markets. So for Suarez, that would mean putting it the most on the top 10 market, putting a bit on the top 5, and then a tiny amount on the outright as well to give yourself upside should Suarez wind up winning. It's similar to like an each way bet in golf, where you still cash if Suarez finishes inside the top 10, but you give yourself higher upside should he truly spike and win this race. For me personally, the way I want to play this is take my one typical bet size, whatever your baseline bet size is. Just for me, talking personally, you have to decide based on your own risk, but I want to take that one bet and then divide that up, because I don't want to be overexposed to just one driver, given that, he's never won at Martinsville. He's never finished better than 9th and stuff like that. But I don't want to be overexposed. So take the overall bet size and place a little bit more than half of it on the top 10 market, a little bit less, and then, a little bit less than that, or less than that on the top 5 market, and then tiny amount on the outright. That way you can benefit should he win this race. So that's the overall thought process on Suarez here. Why do I want to bet Suarez? Great question. Let's talk about that right now. They've been racing at Martinsville in the next gen car for 4 races. And across those 4 races, Suarez has 2 top 10 average running positions. There are only 9 drivers who have done that, including Suarez. One of those drivers is not in the field. That's Eric Almirola. The other drivers are all 22-1 or shorter to win this race. Chase Briscoe is the longest one at 22-1 outside of Daniel Suarez. The other guys are like Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney. That's where the grand majority of guys are, towards the top of the odds board. Then you get down to Suarez, who is all the way down at 100-1 to win this race. Looking back to last year in the fall, that's one of the races where Suarez did not run well. I mentioned before the 2 top 10 average running positions. He qualified 2nd and 7th in those 2 races and ran inside the top 10. Didn't finish well, but he had stage points in all 4 stages, stuff like that. Last fall, he did not run well. He finished, I think, 34th in that race and qualified 27th. So you may be like, okay, maybe those 2 were flukes. But during that weekend, Suarez had the 3rd best 10-lap average in practice once you account for group differentials. He was very fast in practice. And as a result of that, Suarez closed for that race at 80-1 to win, despite the fact he qualified 27th. Worked his way through the field. He was running 12th, and then there was a wreck. I think Joey Logano wrecked Ty Gibbs, and Suarez got caught up in it, not his own doing. Running 12th at that time, he was probably in line to work his way inside the top 10 had he not gotten caught up in that wreck. So each of the past 3 races at Martinsville, Suarez had speed, whether it be during the race or during practice. And I feel like it makes sense because you do see some correlation between drivers who are good at road courses and good at Martinsville. AJ Allmendinger has always been pretty good here. Kyle Larson finally figured things out last year. So there is a correlation. They're shifting, there's straightaways, there's a lot of braking and stuff like that. So I think it anecdotally makes sense Suarez would be good here. And he's shown it in, again, I think at least 3 of the 4 next gen races. So Suarez 100-1 to win this race. He is 15-1 to finish inside the top 5 and plus 350 to finish inside the top 10. If you were to place just one of these bets, I would go with the top 10 at plus 350 because, again, he's never really popped from an upside perspective as far as finishes go at Martinsville, but I think that is within his range of outcomes. So I show value in all 3 individually. I want to ladder this to give myself upside should Suarez truly pop this weekend. But if you're taking just one, I'd go with the top 10 market at plus 350. Didn't have time to dig into the Xfinity or Truck Series markets here for today on the show, but I'll have full write-ups on my win simulations for both of those over on FanDuel Research later on today. So if you want full sims for the Truck Series and Xfinity Series, go to FanDuel.com/research, and I'll have that up later on today. But that's all we got here for the podcast for today. Big thank you once again to Austan Cass for swinging by, breaking down his thoughts on EPL Matchweek 32. Find Austan on Twitter at Austan Cass. I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. You can also follow FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today and throughout this entire week. Good luck to you with your bets this weekend. Enjoy all the basketball, enjoy the soccer, the baseball, the NASCAR, and the Formula One. We'll talk to you once again on Monday to preview the men's national championship. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.